Welcome to episode Welcome to episode 43 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we continue with the epic story of King Oedipus, with the story of Jocasta and Oedipus inflict punishment upon themselves. And now everything was revealed in awful clarity. Oedipus fled from the great hall and ran through the palace, asking for his sword to strike from the face of the earth the monster who was both his mother and his wife. But there was no one to answer him, for all scattered before this apparition of madness and rage. At last he reached his bedchamber, smashed the locked door, and broke into the room. He was halted by the sight which met his eyes. High above the bed hung Jocasta, her hair framing her face in tangled strands. A rope tightened about her throat. For a long time, Oedipus stared at the corpse, and grief rendered him speechless. But then he cried aloud and lowered the rope until the body touched the floor. From her robe he tore the golden clasps, clutched them in his hand, raised them high, and bidding his eyes never more see what he did or suffered, pierced the balls until a stream of blood gushed from the sockets. He asked the servants to open the gates and lead him out to the people of Thebes, that they might see the slayer of his father, the husband of his mother, a monster on earth, one hated by the gods. They did his bidding, but his subjects, who had loved and revered their ruler for so long, felt only compassion for him. Even Creon, whom he had accused unjustly, did not mock of him or rejoice in his misfortune. He hurried to remove from the sight of the populace this man laden with the curse of the gods, and put him in the care of his children. Oedipus was moved by so much kindness. He made his brother-in-law keeper of the throne for his young sons, requested that his ill-omened mother be buried, and put his orphaned daughters under the protection of the new ruler. For he demanded exile from the country he had tainted with his twofold crime. He wanted to live or die according to the will of the gods on Mount Cithaeron, where his parents had exposed him so long ago. Then he called for his daughters, whose voices he yearned to hear one last time, and he laid his hands on their heads. He blessed Creon for all the undeserved love he had shown him, and fervently prayed that under their new king, the people of Thebes would enjoy the favor of the gods he himself had been denied. Creon led him back into the palace, and now Oedipus, whom many thousands had obeyed, whose glory as the liberator of Thebes had spread over the world, this man who had solved the most difficult of riddles and found the key to his own life's enigma, all too late, prepared to go through the gates of this city like a blind beggar and set out on the journey to the very borders of his realm. Oedipus and Antigone. In that first hour when Oedipus had discovered the truth about himself, the swiftest death would have been welcome. Had the people risen against their king and stoned him, he would have been exalted. Since the boon of death had been denied him, he had begged to be exiled and accepted his banishment as a welcome gift. But when he sat in his room in utter darkness, when his frenzy abated, he began to conjure up the terrors of wandering through alien regions, blind and poor. The love of home stirred in his heart, and with it the feeling that by the loss of his wife and his sight he had already atoned for wrongs committed unknowingly. Nor did he hesitate to voice his wishes to remain in Thebes to Creon and to his sons, and to Cleres and Polynices. But now it appeared that Creon's kindness had been prompted by a very passing impulse, and that the two boys were selfish and hard of heart. Creon compelled his ill-starred kinsman to keep to his first decision, and the sons, whose foremost duty should have been to assist their father, refused him aid. There was barely an exchange of words. They thrust a baker's staff into his hand and forced him to leave the palace. Only his daughters had pity on him. Ismene, the younger, stayed behind in her brother's house in order to further her father's cause. The elder, Antigone, shared his exile and guided the steps of the blind old man. She accompanied him on a journey full of hardships. On bare feet she walked, and she, so delicately reared, suffered hunger, the heat of the sun, the lash of the rain, and was content if only her father had enough to eat. At first he planned to court wretchedness or find death in the barren region of Cithaeron, but because he loved the immortals, he did not want to take the step without knowing their will. He made a pilgrimage to the oracle of Pythian Apollo, and here he was given a small measure of comfort. The gods knew that Oedipus had sinned against the laws of nature and the most sacred laws of human society without his own knowledge or wish. So grave a fault had to be atoned for, even though it was done in ignorance, but the punishment was not to last forever. After a long time, so the oracle foretold, he was to be absolved, and this was to be when he reached the land appointed by fate, the land where the stern Eumenides would grant him a refuge. Now, the name of Eumenides, or well-wishers, was one which mortals had given to the Erinyes, or Furies, the goddesses of vengeance, in order to honor and placate them. Thus the oracle was obscure and strange. The Furies were to give Oedipus peace and absolution for his sins against nature, but Oedipus trusted the gods, and leaving to fate the fulfillment of that peculiar prophecy, he wandered through Greece. His daughter led and tended him, and he lived on the alms of the compassionate. He always asked only little and received only little, but it sufficed him. For his long exile, his sorrow and his noble spirit had taught him to do without all but the bravest necessities. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.